There's this whole kind of like battle between performance and awareness, right? So if you look into the cost per click, which is the main indicator for performance marketing, it doubled its price in the last 2 years, and it's going to keep doubling the next 2 years or the next 12 months, and it's going to keep doing that because it's a bidding business, right? So the more you have companies bidding, the more expensive it gets. So what do? You build your brand, right? So again, it falls on our lap, right? It's kind of like performance. You had your last 10 years, 15, now it's our turn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Gaynor, host of Signal in the Noise. And on today's episode, we sit down with Guga Peccicacco. He's the PR and communications manager for all of Latin America at Infor, which is a cloud-based, industry-specific enterprise software company, one of those secretly large businesses that powers your entire life. And in this very insightful conversation, we're going to cover a wide range of topics like Guga's background from surfing to maybe marine biologist, then pivoting into PR and communications. And then with that fresh perspective, he has some really hot takes, like why Guga believes we're in the golden era of PR and why PR needs to talk to business rather than fluff to really connect communications to enterprise sales and drive the bottom line. That and much more on this awesome episode of Signal in the Noise. Guga, where do we find you beaming in from today?
Hi, Dan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm beaming in from São Paulo, Brazil. Not so sunny today, but the fame that we have.
I don't know. There's very little to complain about in the climate of São Paulo. That's really cool. Thank you so much for joining us. You are the PR and communications manager for all of Latin America for Infor, correct?
Yes, that's it.
So tell me a little bit about Infor as a company and your role there as the PR and communications manager for all of Latin America.
Okay, so Infor, we introduce ourselves as the industry cloud company. We sell solutions, cloud solutions, and AI technology. And I am the communications manager for Infor Latin America. So I run everything related to PR, social media, content for all the industries and markets down here.
So Infor is one of those secretly large companies, one of those tech players that powers more of your life than you realize. Tell us a little bit about just the tentacles of Infor. What are some of the big notable aspects of the business that people might not know, but would definitely appreciate and maybe without knowing it, rely upon in their day-to-day life?
Awesome. So Infor is a very industry-specific company. So we cover over 2,000 micro verticals, but you would see us in, distribution, logistics, automotive, manufacturing, healthcare as well, hospitality. So as you said, we are secretly a large company. We're probably the fourth largest cloud ERP company in the world. And interesting part of our history is that we are owned by Koch Industries, which is the largest or second largest private company in the US. And we are one of the top partners for AWS. So we do have, Koch on one side, AWS on the other, and, we're the prodigal son in the middle.
I think you know a thing or two about working with large corporate enterprises. You yourself, though, a very entrepreneurial background, a true global citizen, from what I know about you. Let's go back, maybe not all the way to birth, but perhaps starting in college. Tell me a little bit about your career arc, how you got to where you are today.
That is a fun story because I didn't strive to be a comms and PR person. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I've been a amateur surfer for all my life. So I wanted to surf. I want to stay with the waves and the dolphins. And I had a conversation with my sister and she just got real with me. And she said, get a real job, buy a boat, and then you can go surf anywhere. I'm still trying to find that boat, but I just looked into...
You don't have the boat yet? We got to work on that.
I'm hoping this is a good step. This podcast is a step towards my boat.
For all those brand partners out there from Boston Whaler on down, we're welcoming a sponsorship just for Guga. Okay, so you thought about, let's pivot maybe to something that perhaps has more, let's say, financial resiliency than being a marine biologist. So then you thought, well, what do I do next?
So yeah, that was interesting because I looked into my strengths and, my weaknesses. And I thought, I know nothing about physics. I'm not really great at math. So, why not try communications? I'm good with words, and I went into that. And, my father was very specific about me joining like the best university I could. So once I chose a topic, he said like, you're going to this one, which is ESPN. So it's the Superior School of Marketing and Advertising. It's the largest university in Latin America for, this area. And the interesting part is that it just hit me. I wasn't a good student. I was a very average student in school, but when I joined college, university, for me, it was just like I found myself and I thrived. I learned everything. I went deep into, Red Kotler books and David Akers and all those fun guys like, Jack Trout, Arias, all these guys, and fell in love with the topic of branding, awareness, communications, PR, and here I am.
I love that. And tell me about a couple of the stops along the way. As I understand it, you haven't been at Infor for your entire career. You've bounced around a little bit, as, by the way, 100% of PR and communications professionals have, since they're usually a jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife, CIA agent, whatever your analogy is. Tell me a little bit about some of the jobs you've had since going to school for it.
The most significant role I had at the beginning was for a French company. It's called Edenred. They operate in many, many countries. And I had a very specific communications role because it was more towards partnering up with marketing, B2B marketing. So it wasn't just doing press relations or media relations. It was also like digital marketing, events, working with sales. And I think that gave me a lot of experience more into looking to PR and comms and how we can actually be closer to business, right? So what I see out there in the world, and it's often like communication is very institutional and it's not really, we don't like to talk a lot about business. And for me, it was a different role because the communications team was part of the B2B marketing team, very accountable for the results, right? And I was in this company for almost 9 years. And in the last year, I had an opportunity to work abroad. So I left Brazil and went to Spain and stayed there for a year. And it was a whole different adventure working for Europe. And eventually I moved from a big company, a large enterprise, into the startup world. And I was in the startup world for 6 years, and it was a whole different animal because, you think structure-wise or strategy-wise, you're pivoting all the time. There's a fun thing that happened. Like for me, like I left this, super steady career in a large multinational company and landed in a very small operation with 20, 30 people in Spain within the corporate benefits world. And at some point, I even had to, give my seat to someone else in the company because we didn't have enough tables to sit down. So it was
that's like, how you know you're working at a real startup.
Yeah, I work at a real startup, right? So it's a garage feeling, and it was very interesting. And for me, like the change of cultures, I went from just doing events PR strategy within Brazil, São Paulo, mostly Rio, like the steady and where the comfortable place for me. And then I moved towards like working all around Europe in 8 different countries, managing teams, in Germany, the UK or Spain or Italy or France, Netherlands, like so many cultures and differences. And, it kind of puts you in a mindset to really listen and learn. And, kind of like if you go towards like, maybe have this kind of a sponge, sponging everything and sucking everything in and learning about it, it just gives you a whole new perspective.
Amazing. And you found your way to Infor. Tell me about what it's like running an entire continent. I mean, half of a continent. I mean, it's really, really huge to think about just the cultures, the audiences, the languages, the different industries. You said that the company works across 200 different micro verticals. How do you wrap your head around
2,000?
2,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't even know there were 2,000 micro industries, period. How do you wrap your head around a job at that scale?
You have to love to learn about, industries and context. I often talk about learning the context of things. So from my experience in Europe, I landed in Infor, and we have here, I think it's like 26 or 27 different countries in Latin America. And as you go deeper into understanding their population, their economy, their history, and how they relate to other countries, like import-export relations, etc., it's amazing how much you learn and how you see the engines of the world working, right? So you think about what does it mean, like the Panama Canal? Like, what does it mean to the world? Like, 6% of all merchandise of the world goes through the Panama Canal. And what's the importance of that for Mexico? And what's the role in Brazil's mining or Chile mining industry? So there's so many great things that you can learn. And, maybe you talk about like semiconductors and how Mexico competes with Korea. And it energizes me. And if you spend time learning, at some point you're going to reach a moment that you can actually work these countries and work these contexts and work with the media and with social media and strategies, and you get really effective because you have this knowledge that very few people actually do. So to me, it's what energizes me. It's very challenging, but it's very insightful as well. So I think that's the word I'm looking for.
So let's talk about a few of the big trends that are going on in the industry. You and I connected beforehand. And speaking of how challenging your job is, I think it's only getting more difficult in the macro context as well, because there's between the obviously political disruption, economic upheaval. We're talking currently the day after our president, Donald Trump, announced Liberation Day with a raft of new tariffs, for example. And personal opinions on politics aside, it's very difficult to help keep your company out of the fray, to continue business as usual without intersecting with some of these difficult challenges. Yet you told me you think we're in the golden era for PR. And I wanted to ask why that's the case, because most PR people I talk to have a bit of a dystopian view. It's never been tougher to be me. Why do you think, especially as with technology advancements accelerating as fast as they are, it's better than ever to be a PR professional, and how it's happened for you?
To me, it's very logical, right? So technology used to be the differentiator factor for companies, right? So you had this technology and then you lead a market or you're very different from your competitors. But with Gen AI and whatever's happening, like the fast advancement of technology, things are leveling out. So, you see, take for instance, like OpenAI launches something and then comes Anthropic and launches like pretty much the same functionality like 2-3 weeks later, and then comes Gemini, Google, and does the same. So technology is not the differentiator anymore. It's more accessible than ever. So if you look into companies, so what is the differentiator factor for companies if it's not technology, right? If you put that together with whatever Gen AI is doing, like you don't know who's producing the content anymore. You don't know. They have deep, like fake news is going everywhere. Like we don't know. Like we can see videos, we can see cloned videos, cloned voices, cloned images. So whatever is left to me is reputation. So I see people going towards those places they trust, they know, they are comfortable with, and they know that there's a reputation behind it. And reputation is where we thrive. So to me, if you're in PR and communications, you should feel really happy right now, but you need to prepare yourself, right? Because we are a very kind of like old school industry. We do things the same way. We've been doing things in the last 20 years. So what we need to do is prepare ourselves to surf this wave for the next 10 years. And even if you look into performance marketing, right? So there's this whole kind of like battle between performance and awareness, right? So if you look into the cost per click, which is like the main indicator for performance marketing, it doubled its price in the last 2 years, and it's going to keep doubling the next 2 years or the next 12 months, and it's going to keep doing that because it's a bidding business, right? So the more you have companies bidding, the more expensive it gets. So what do? You build your brand, right? So again, it falls on our lap, right? So it's kind of like performance. You had your last 10 years, 15, now it's our turn. Now it's.
By the way, I think that's like more true than ever with the advent of AI. I mean, everything that I'm seeing is how communications professionals can be the most tangible adopters of AI in their organization, and not just for content creation, for measurement, for strategy development, and for ongoing optimization of those KPIs that they're using to shape strategy. Okay, the other hot take that you threw at me, which I wanted to put towards you, is that PR needs to talk business. You talked about, I think you sent me in an email, enough with this super institutional, fluffy stuff. I think that's so resonant, particularly in the light of how we've seen the realignment in political messaging, where the way that companies speak is actually more formal, more diplomatic than the way that diplomats and politicians speak. And that's a real sea change. And so when it comes to the art of messaging, tell me why you feel it's important. I think I can guess, but tell me why you feel it's important to connect communications to the business strategy and indeed connect communications outcomes to business outcomes.
Well, this is another thing that I bring from, we're talking a little bit earlier about like my first job opportunity. And I told you I was raised within a marketing B2B environment. So I was really close to business. And it's not what we see out there in the PR world, right? So we often want to do the sustainability messages or the nice histories, et cetera, stories, et cetera. But at the end of the day, like business is business, right? So we need to connect ourselves. We need to be closer to whatever's bringing results to the table. So we cannot be naive enough to say branding just because it's a good brand, it's going to get us, guarantee our jobs or our future in this business. So we need to, take off the institutional hat and work with sales, get closer to sales and think about, but not just do what sales does. We need to do what we do best to help sales do what they can do best and to help marketing do what they can do best. So I often see how many PR and communications professionals out there you see that can read a balance sheet and can understand the concepts of ARR or understand the concept of margins and growth. So these are concepts that are often so far away from us. And I really think that we need to get really close. Like we need to go back to school and learn these topics, because when we see where the business is going and we know that we are good at what we do, we can build that bridge. We can help the company cross that bridge towards margin growth, etc. And I'm not saying sustainability is just not important. I'm just saying that we cannot just live off the super institutional stuff. So for me, there is no PR if there's no sales involved, if there's no results involved.
Isn't that interesting? I went to an event with Seth Matlins, who runs the Forbes CMO network, and he looked out in this room of all the very accomplished CMOs out there from Pepsi to Spotify. I'll never forget what he said. He said, all of you are just sellers. Make no mistake, you may use $100 million campaign and sponsor the Super Bowl to do it, but you're here to sell. And there's that famous aphorism in tech, you're either building the product or you're selling it. Better connecting PR to at least one half of the very important legs of the school, talking about the product in a way that actually moves product is essential. Do you have any advice in terms of how you're adopting those two topics we just talked about together, the use of AI and technology to better connect PR to driving the bottom line of the business? Are there ways that you use technology to connect to revenue?
Yes, I have a very good example. So one thing that I do is I use AI to analyze and follow specific accounts that our company is trying to land. So I talk to the sales team and understand what are your top 10 accounts for this quarter? These are the top 10 accounts. So I use AI to follow these companies in the media, in social media, in articles, see everything that is happening in their industry. And I create with AI as well, I create digestible reports to the sales team. So the sales team from their next meeting, they know exactly the movement that these companies are doing. And this is just one of the things that I do that I work for sales in this area. Another thing that I do is help sales understand market context. So we are the ones connected to the media. We read, I don't know how many pages of news that we read every day. So it's easier for us to understand the context of whatever is happening in specific industries. I told you Infor is an industry-specific company. So I need to know whatever is happening and why this or that and the other problem is impacting our industry. So I take that knowledge, make it digestible again, and feed to the sales marketing team. So I even help marketing build webinars, events, presentations. I work with BDRs to help them write the outbound emails because, we have the context, they have the sales knowledge. So we need to work together. The challenge, I think, for all the PR professionals out there is to think that AI is just for, helping you write the next post or write the next article. I think that's just like superficial usage of AI.
I want to say I love those two examples. One, doing deep research on a prospective company that you might want to partner with, if not just sell to, because there's only so much that desk side research can yield, and there's only so much content a human being can read and digest. So your ability to do that account by account for the sales team at scale, super important external validation for how they're proposing to pitch one of those 2,000 micro verticals. But even broader, every company is liable to just look at its narrative and just look at its value prop and basically take the same deck to every single meeting with few changes. The ability to say across the industry, here are trends that we're noticing, and here's how Infor intersects with those industries is going to be extremely different if you're talking to restaurants or manufacturers or shippers or anything in between. So you really made yourself a business critical function.
Yeah, and I try to do that. And there's a thing that there's a huge challenge out there is that we often fall in love with our solution and our products, and we need to fall in love with the pain of our customers. So we need to understand, and the media is also we can look at them as a customer as well. But if we shift our mindset from our own solutions and stop thinking about what is this little thing that I'm doing and look at the bigger picture, we can surf a lot of pain points and contexts out there that we can insert ourselves. And it's just like it broadens the opportunities that we have. So let me give you an example. We're doing a lot of things around talent scarcity. So talent scarcity is a problem. It's a big problem for everyone. We're losing generation and bonus. Employees that are coming from new generations, maybe they're not super into want to work for big companies. Maybe they want to be more entrepreneurs. They want to be more independent, etc. So how do you solve the talent scarcity problem? Oh, by the way, it's technology. And do you know what we sell? Technology. So the idea is to understand the pain point and the problem of the market so well that you can convince companies out there that your solution is the only possible and logical solution. So that's the idea, but it takes time. It takes time. It takes hours and hours of reading and understanding, and it's not easy.
With AI, it can happen faster at the scale you need to. And really what you're saying is you're turning PR and communications from a function that describes what the company is up to into a critical function that gives the company a sense of direction. In other words, you've transformed from a describe us to an intelligence function. And that I think is a really cool transformation at especially a large company that you're doing.
I'm going to steal your sentence, right? I'm going to use it right now. You did a better job than I did explaining this.
Well, I'm just reading the tea leaves. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about your career. One of the things that I found is really interesting is PR, comms, marketing professionals are always behind the scenes. And yet, both internally and externally, it's more important than ever as reputation rises in prominence, as reputation becomes more valuable to a company's market cap than ever before. It's essential that they enhance their personal brand, whether that's building relationships across functions like HR, investor relations, and operations internally, or externally, as you've done quite well, be a leading voice on practitioners in the industry. And I understand you're one of the top LinkedIn voices in not only Brazil, but then like over top 100 worldwide. Tell me a little bit about how you did that.
Well, it was a journey. I started last year because I saw a problem in our industry, right? I saw, agency professionals, like PR professionals within agencies fighting publicly against journalists and the media. They were going at each other live on LinkedIn. And that really bothered me because I'm a client. I hired these people to, help me do my job. If they start fighting, it's a problem for me. So what I did was try to find a solution. So how can I help the industry, connect better, right? So I started trying to come up with solutions and better ways to work together. And it kind of like it hit off, and it was through LinkedIn. And then I started the PR guy, kind of like personal brand for me. And it opened so many doors. So I really recommend that. I know that we do a great job as PR professionals working for the reputation of companies and, executives out there, but we need to look into our own reputation, and we need to be brave in terms of, producing content. We need to know that our opinion matters. It's not rare that I see people that they are resistant to comment on topics or give their opinion because they feel that maybe their opinion is not good enough or it's not worth it. So, we have a voice. We know a lot of different contexts that is happening out there. Our opinion matters, and we need to trust that and be brave in a sense that, putting ourselves out there. And I know it's not very common for people to, post a picture or post a video, but we need to start, right? Because if our brand, our own personal brand, is not amazing or we're structured or we're not doing this well, how can we sell this to someone else, right? So we need to work in ourselves.
If you can't do it for yourself, how are you supposed to do it for, a kind of institutional B2B product?
Yeah,
it's not going to be.
It's the first thing I look like when I just hired a PR company, and I went into every single person's LinkedIn profile. I was like, I want to see what are you doing, but it's not that if I see something that is not good and I don't like, I'm not going to hire them. It's my job, since I've been doing this the right way, or I think it's the right way. I'm going to help them build their reputation as well. So I made it also my problem. So I help them build their own, because if I'm just pointing fingers and saying like, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, I'm not building anything. I'm actually destroying the whole sector. So if I can, and I know, and I can help people, that's what I should do.
As we take a turn into the final stretch here of the episode, I wanted to ask you about some career lessons. Now, you just did this big interview. You talked about a couple career lessons. You talked about, I think I'm paraphrasing here, about getting outside of your bubble, staying on the cutting edge of technology and AI, thinking more comprehensively about the impact of PR and communications to look at your marketing distribution, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about some of those career lessons. If you're a communications or marketing executive and you're an aspiring Guga, or you just want to learn from a peer, you're already at Guga's level, but you want to learn from the best in business. Give me some examples of those career lessons you've learned on your globetrotting journey.
I would say like the first thing that is really important, take care of your own personal finance. I think that's very important, because like it's very common to see PR professionals out there struggling and closing weird contracts and not getting where they want to be because they depend on the monthly paycheck. That's a problem. Second is embrace technology, as you said it. Like learn this thing, like be curious. Go ask AI how AI works, right? And watch those videos. YouTube is out there. Watch the tutorials, sign up for a newsletter, and not just a media newsletter. Go to the geeks and the beats and the bytes. Embrace this stuff and try them out. And last but not least, I think I'm really, really confident about the context. Like if you're not embracing different contexts, if you're always sitting in the same comfortable place, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So you just have to do. There's one phrase that I really like, which is the action is the antidote for fear. And you need to keep moving, like put the wheels in motion. You would deal with fear afterwards. So
action is the antidote to fear. True for companies trying to make waves in this very complicated environment. True for PR and communications professionals trying to extend their remit internally. A very universal phrase on the level of something Buddha had said. So I love that. Well, Guga, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Learned a lot about you, from your agility in terms of your intellectual abilities, your ability to use technology to elevate the value of communications, even taking care of your personal finances, which I think is wise words for anybody these days. Thank you so much for joining us on Signal in the Noise. One last question. Obviously, you're big on LinkedIn. What are the best ways for folks listening to this to reach out to you?
Well, thank you very much, Danny. I loved being a part of this. I was really excited to have this conversation. So the best place to get in contact with me is actually on LinkedIn. So Guga Peccicacco. Hopefully you get a link somewhere so people can find me. And I think that's the best place. I'm in there all the time, every day. So, follow me and connect with me. Let's exchange more ideas and be better PR pros.
That's Peccicacco with 5 C's in it. Yeah. For all of you listening. A fabulous conversation with you. Thanks so much, Guga. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. But for now, this has been another really fun episode of Signal in the Noise.
Thank you. Bye. See you, everyone.